And perfect. All right. I think we're good. Hey, everybody. Hello. Making sure that I'm online wherever I'm going to be online. Happy Sunday. Hey, happy Sunday, Stephen. Hello. Hey. Hello. Hey, guys. Hello. All right. So this is our Sunday sermon. That's what we're doing, our Sunday sermon. And we do this every Sunday. So I'm looking to see if I need to do anything before I get started. Everything looks okay on this end. Cool deal. Cool beans. Okay. All right. Hello. Hi, Miss Jenny. Hello. Oh yeah, my voice is great. My voice came back. It recovered. It recouped. It just like sometimes when you talk too much in a day, and you overdo it, and that's what happens. Sometimes whenever I'm having a very busy day, Miss Jenny, I will like lose my voice towards the end of the day, or it just starts to get a little bit harder for me to maintain the conversation or just to maintain everything. Hey, Ray. Hello. Hey. Hello. All right. So. Before we get started, I just want to make sure everything's okay on both ends. This is our, let's see, this is our Sunday sermon services, y'all. So if you're tuning in and you wanted to ask a question, unfortunately, I'm not doing readings today. This is only for spiritual. There's Christina. Hey, Christina. All right, cool. All right, so I think we're good on there. Cool deal. So we're good up there, and then here on Instagram. Perfect. All right. Let's get started. So, hello everybody. Welcome to my Sunday services, my Sunday sermon. I do a sermon every single Sunday. It's me giving a lecture about a lesson or something that I've learned that might be beneficial to you, might help you understand your spiritual experiences and processes as well. For those of you tuning in, thank you so much for joining in. I don't do readings for the services, so I don't conduct any sessions or readings or anything like that. So if you're tuning in wanting to ask a question that's a psychic question or a spirit communication session, unfortunately I won't be doing those today. This is only for just the sermon, and then also after I'm done with my lecture, then I answer questions, and I'll look for questions that pertain to the topic. So it either can pertain to the subject that we discussed, or it can pertain to like a spiritual based question. If there's a question that you would like to ask about that. No personal questions and no readings today. Okay. All right. So I am gonna get started. I want to make sure we're good. And thank you. Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Xena. All right. So let's get started. So the topic that I wanted to talk about today is I wanted to talk about the process of reinvention, and also just coming to a place of resolution and peace within yourself about things that you wish to change or wish to evolve and to develop within yourself. I think in our life, when we become adults, right? When we become adults and we think we know who we are, even though we're still in our younger years, there's a whole lot to still gain, to still learn, to understand about ourselves. And oftentimes we do not know who we are until we experience life, and we know through the process of directing interaction and engagement with the reality of this world. A lot of us can read books. We can, dive into information material. We can look online. We can, fall into the trap of information overload. But ultimately, you are not who you are until you've tested that information, that version of you in this world, in this reality. And for myself, and I'll use myself as an example, many years ago, when I started my spiritual path and I started to figure out who I was and what I was here to do and what my role, what my work would be about, I studied as much as I could. So I looked into different religious faiths. I looked So let people get. I'm telling y'all, if it's not one, then it's another. I guess with all this drama. So let's try this again. Okay, here we go. Make sure there's sound.
I'm telling y'all, if it's not one, then it's another. I guess with this.
Okay, there. Can y'all hear me now on Instagram? Just want to make sure y'all can hear me now. Yes, can you hear me now? Yes. Thank you. Yes, great. And thank y'all for telling me. Whenever I start speaking, I completely I everything that could be a disruption or can be kind of like a that can get in the way of me focusing on what I'm trying to say, immediately I block it out. So even with I don't even follow along with messages. So whenever I'm doing readings and stuff, I don't even see what people are typing or writing. I never ever see that because I'm so focused on what I'm saying and I'm just looking directly into the camera because I'm looking directly at you in my mind. So that's why. But thank you all. Yeah, I got a phone call right when I was doing it, and I think that's where the sound went. Is through it got messed up. So I went ahead and changed my settings so I'm on do not disturb so I don't get any more interruptions there. But thanks so much for all that. Okay. All right. So let me get back to what I was saying because I'm going to have to back up a little bit and repeat what I was just talking about. Okay. So what I'm talking about today, what we're going to discuss is we're going to discuss the topic of reinvention, like spiritual reinvention, self-reinvention. And what I mean by this is in our lifetime, we think we know who we are, right? We think we know who we are based on what we've experienced and also based on what we've read, what we've seen others do, etc. A lot of people base a lot of their own ideas about themselves on what they've read and what they've seen and not necessarily on what they've experienced. And this is why we oftentimes see people who are speaking about something that they actually have no direct experience in. And that's an issue, that's a problem, that's a challenge because you can't guide others, you can't support others, you can't give others an understanding if you don't have a direct understanding yourself. So I think it's important that we as spiritual human beings, that when we move forward in our lives, anything that we do, that we stay within integrity and that it be in direct relation to something we have experience with. If you look online and you look at different churches and different faiths and followings, there are a lot of people who stand on a stage and speak about something that they have no direct experience of, but they will speak on it and they will elevate themselves with that platform. And that's fine if they feel great with doing that, and if there are people around them who want to support that process, that's fine, but it doesn't really speak to the heart of the individual going through crises every day. We have, as human beings, we deal with the human condition. We're dealing with the condition of suffering in this world, and that's not something that any of us can avoid. That's something that we are all going to experience in one way, shape, or form. We can control or we can have a say in how much suffering we experience here, because really it comes down to state of being or what we practice in our spirituality or in our faith or belief systems, and also in how we respond or react to the circumstances that we're faced with. All of that is important because it helps us to gain a sense of being that we can have a standard. We can, if we react and respond to things in a certain way, then likely we're going to have the same follow-up experience. So if we are used to taking a situation that is challenging for us to deal with and we try to come to resolution with it as quickly as possible, then the standard for us is going to be, we can get through these issues relatively quickly and we can get back to a state of peace and back to a state of stability and consistency and balance. But most people don't have a way to cope with things in that form. Most people are just figuring it out as they go along. And when it comes to spirituality is wonderful because it isn't really defined by a specific religion or belief system. And if you ask one spiritual practitioner about a topic or an issue, and then you ask somebody else the same question, you might get two different answers, because ultimately the truth lies in the eye of the beholder and the person who is giving you the response. But for most of us, when we go through life, we have experiences. Doesn't matter what we study, what we learn about, these experiences are either going to affirm what we learn, or it's going to help us to understand more clearly what it is we should actually be doing or how we should actually be coping with situations and such. But we can always make a choice and decide that who we've been and what we've done is no longer valid. It no longer serves us, and we can change. We have the ability to change and adapt as human beings and as spiritual practitioners as well. Just because you call yourself a spiritual person and you have a belief system that you've bought into, and then you experience life, and the life essentially clarifies some of those positions for you, you can choose to change your positions based on the experiences that you've had. You don't have to stick to something and blindly follow along or have a faith in something that is not being affirmed by your experiences. It's important for your experiences to affirm what you know, what you understand conceptually and ideologically. So when I was younger, and I was in my early 20s. I was still a young person who was maturing and understanding things. And even though I had my first spiritual awakening in my teenage years, and it started with my first psychic experiences, I questioned everything, and I began to study and look into different religious beliefs and systems and ideologies, and trying to formulate and understand who I was in all of that, and using that as a guide. In the process of doing so, I learned a lot about myself, but I also focused more on upholding those beliefs and those ideologies versus allowing myself to evolve individually, with that just being a way to gauge who I was, and using that as a tool. I was not using it as a tool. I was using it as a foundation of who I was. And so I based everything I was around those beliefs, those ideologies. And a lot of people do this, especially those of us who come from a religious background like Catholicism or like Christianity. You are taught, you are conditioned to believe certain things. And being conditioned into believing these things, there is no room for change. There's no room for adaptation. There's no room for evolution. You aren't allowed to evolve an idea because experience has taught you something differently. For example, when you think of Catholicism, even though the Catholic Church in its form and in the work that it's done over, hundreds of years, it has committed huge and massive atrocities against humanity. It has done some really, really horrible things in the name of God, or in the name of the faith, or in the name of Jesus. And yet it still continues to operate as if it didn't. It never really made it right. It never really stopped and said, hey, this faith, our foundation, our belief system, we've done some really horrible things. And we acknowledge that, we own that, and we need to work to resolve that. And there's never been that with the Catholic religion, with the Catholicism, with the Pope, etc. And so when you see things sometimes where they are speaking against, LGBTQ, which is something I happen to be a part of, when they speak against that, but then they also come back and also say, but, children who are LGBT, their parents shouldn't abandon them. They should still be loved. At that point, you're in conflict because your beliefs, the faith, the structure of the religion is based on ideologies that no longer align with the purpose of the faith, the purpose of the belief system, with the teachings that are held in such high esteem. And so you get into conflict. And unfortunately, with organizations like organized religion, it's really hard to change the practices, because it requires courage and it requires ownership of these atrocities. It requires that the belief system, that the religion take responsibility for what it has done, right? And if it's not willing to do that, then it becomes a problem. There's no growth. There's no there's no evolution for the faith, for the belief system. And unfortunately, we as humans, we don't operate that way. We are not stagnant beings. We are always evolving, always adapting, always changing. And if we are self-aware enough and we're conscious enough, we can choose who we want to be in this world. We can choose how we want to be in this world. But in order to choose that and to actually change in a way that aligns with the direction you're wanting to go in, you have to own who you've been. And that is where it becomes a bit of a challenge for us as individuals, because we can speak on a faith like the Catholic Church and Catholicism, the Pope, the Vatican. We can speak on a faith that is not willing to change, to evolve towards more compassion, more love, more generosity, in alignment with its beliefs and its established principles. we can't expect an organization like that to change, but we have the ability to change. We can change, and we can do so by first just acknowledging who we've been. Here's an example of this, because there's always an opportunity to evolve into something more than what we've been. But in order to do that, we've got to start at the beginning. And for myself, when I first started to awaken spiritually, and practice different ways of connecting with Source, different ways of understanding our connection to this world, to each other, understanding how we are given an opportunity here to experience life in unique ways. When I was beginning to understand myself spiritually, I thought I knew everything, right? I thought I knew everything. And I've seen this happen with people who are also like born again Christians. As soon as they get into it, they're like, I know everything and this is the end all be all. And that's it. There's no change. There's nothing that could be changed about this. So I fell into that trap as well in my beginning spiritual journey. And I noticed a lot of people in the spiritual community doing the same thing. They get into this trap where they get stuck in an ideology and a belief system. They think they know everything. And then they believe that's it. That's the end of the road for them. And I got there. I was there myself. So in my early 20s, even though I had a lot of spiritual awareness and I had studied quite a bit and I knew a lot about different beliefs and ideas and so forth, I was still maturing. I was still evolving as a human being, and I was not who I needed to be to operate with an integrity of those beliefs and those ideas. And one of the experiences that I had, which taught me the opportunity to that I could choose to evolve and to change, was back when I used to work at Starbucks. Back then, I used to spend time, I was in the drive-thru all the time. That's the part of the store that I worked. I was always in the drive-thru, taking orders, dealing with that. And I was very good at it. I was known as a drive-thru queen. I was very good at it. I was known as a drive-thru queen. And customers would come in, order their stuff and whatnot. Well, the store that I was at the time just happened to be down the street from a television station. It was Channel 11, KHOU, which was in Houston. And sometimes we would have people come to our store in River Oaks, which is the store I worked at. We would have people come to our store who worked at the station, or who were reporters, or who were well-known individuals in media and in television. And one day we had one of the reporters come in. Her name was Lisa. And she came in, and when she came in, first of all, I saw her coming out of her car, coming into the store, and I thought, oh my God, she's gorgeous. She's absolutely beautiful. And so I recognized that. But being who I was at that time, and not feeling confident in who I was, not feeling good about myself, really struggling with my sense of self-esteem and self-worth. Whenever I was in a situation where I was dealing with someone who was of prominence or who had an established position that was well known throughout the community, it would kind of make me feel a bit uncomfortable. I was not comfortable with that. I didn't feel worthy of that experience. I didn't feel like I was okay to interact with people like that. And so she came in, got her coffee. Everybody was saying hi to her, being very, very sweet to her, generous. She was very, very kind. And when people are on television, they have to wear a lot of makeup, because there's a lot of things that happen and you have to be under specific types of light. You have to wear a lot of makeup. It's because you have to, look a certain way. There's a certain part you're playing on television, on TV. And so you have to look a certain way. So she came in, and she was obviously still in makeup from having done her segment on the news. And I saw her, and I think I was confused with her name, because I didn't remember her actual name, but I knew who she was because I had seen her on the news. So I thought that she was a different reporter by name, right? But I knew who she was with Channel 11, but I thought she was a different reporter. So I said hello to her, right? And then I went up to her and I said, hi. I said, oh, aren't you? And then I said the other reporter's name. And in that moment, you could tell that she was caught off guard, and she was a little insulted because I was calling her a different reporter. I was asking her if she was a different reporter. And so she responded with a lot of grace and was like, no, that's not me. And I caught myself making the mistake of calling her the wrong reporter's name. And I was like, oh. And so instead of acknowledging my mistake, instead of acknowledging my error, instead of realizing that I had just insulted this woman, I instead decided to not own that, and I wanted to use that to kind of feel better about myself, because I felt awful. I felt like I should have gotten that right, and I didn't, and so I felt awful. So instead of trying to correct myself and acknowledging my mistake, I ended up just like in my head, I was just like, well, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Like, you know, she should be more famous, and then maybe we would remember her name. So in my head, I'm over here spinning it, allowing my sense of pride and ego twist and turn my thoughts around into, I'm still right. This person is still wrong. Even though I'm the wrong person in the situation, I made the mistake, and she's the one that did not do anything to me. So my ego got into that part, and it twisted everything around so that I would see it as if I was still correct in some way, shape, or form, and that it was her fault that I didn't get her name right. So then, fast forward a few minutes, you know, I thought she had left and left the store, and right where I was in the drive-thru, there's a wall there right behind me, and then on the other side of the wall, there's the condiment bar where you go and you get your creamer and you get your sugar and all of that. And I was talking to my boss. I was still in the drive-thru, and I was talking to my boss when she walked up to me, and I said, she's absolutely gorgeous. I was like, but that makeup is incredibly caked on her face. You know, does she even look real? You know, and I was kind of like messing with, I was kind of talking about her in that way. I was being messy. And that was my way of trying to help myself feel better about myself, and because I felt awful. And my boss was like, you might want to be careful with what you're saying, because she's on the other side of the wall, and I'm pretty sure she can hear you. And at that point, again, another mistake, another error. I effed up again. And so I was like, oh my God. So it's like I'm digging myself into a deeper and deeper hole. And my ego, my sense of self-worth is like fighting against that, trying not to feel the way it's feeling. And there's this inner battle that's happening there, and my ego won out. And so she did leave the store, and as she was walking to the car, I, like an ass, opened the drive-thru window, and I said, thank you for coming to Starbucks. You know, we'll look forward to seeing you again. And then I called her by the incorrect name again. And then in that moment, she stopped, froze in her stance, walking, and then you could tell she was very annoyed and irritated at that point, and you could tell that her sense of grace was starting to crack at that point because she was irritated. But then she held together, and then she continued on, and that was unacceptable. That was unacceptable for me to do that, for me to use that situation as a way to make myself feel better when I had made the mistake. It was my fault. After that, I, going forward, had time to think about that and wondered, and I carried a lot of guilt around that. Not because I made the mistake of calling her by the wrong reporter's name, but because I persisted, and then I dug in. I dug my heels in. And so I felt awful. I felt like a horrible human being for doing that. And it sat with me for some time after that. And even though it was just one moment in my life, and even like years later, you know, I still felt awful. Every time I would think about that, I still felt awful. I felt like a horrible human being. And I always wanted to make amends and to make it right and to apologize. I always wanted to apologize. So I desired for the opportunity to apologize, and I carried that with me for years to come. I mean, years went on. I went to a different store, moved to a different city, you know, came back to Houston. I mean, a lot happened over many years. I think it was like 6 or 7 years later. And so fast forward, always felt the need to apologize. And I even told myself, I said, God, if I ever have that opportunity, I'm gonna take advantage of it, and I'm gonna apologize, because I wish I could take that back. And, you know, this poor woman, you know, whoever she is, doesn't matter what she's done in her life, who she's been, whatever, people don't deserve to be treated this way. And I'm the one that was in the wrong, and I needed to acknowledge that and apologize. So I always had that in my head, and I went on with my life still holding that in my head, that if the opportunity presented itself, I would apologize. So fast forward several years, and I am a manager, store manager. Lots changed. I've grown a lot. And I had my own store, and it was in downtown, in our downtown Houston. And I was, the night before, that day I was working in the office in the back room. But the night before I was working, I had been at home meditating, and I had watched a episode of Oprah. And in the show, I think she was doing a segment on Elizabeth Gilbert, I believe, who's the author of Eat, Pray, and Love. And it sounded like a really interesting book and something that was intriguing. And I'm like, I think I want to read this book. And so I thought to myself, maybe should I read this book? Do I need to go and buy this book? And so I even told God, I'm like, if I'm supposed to read this book, or if it's something that I'm supposed to invest energy in reading and going to get, then, give me a sign or let me know, because I would like, if I'm supposed to read this book, then I'll go and get it and I'll do it. So that's what happened that night when I was in meditation after I saw the segment with Oprah. The next day I went to work, and I was working in the back office, and my partners needed a little backup for a moment. And so I came out to help them and to support them while they were going through a little bit of a rush. And as they were going through a little rush, lo and behold, this reporter, Lisa, she walks in, and she walks up and she orders her drink. She didn't remember who I was. This was years later. And I'm sure she encounters a lot of people. It's hard to remember a moment in time. But as soon as I saw her, I was like, whew. And immediately inside of my mind and even in my heart, I heard, this is your chance. You asked for the opportunity to apologize. You asked for the ability to make amends. You asked for this opportunity. Now is your chance to make amends. Now is your chance to apologize and to right a wrong that you made. And I heard that very clearly in my mind. And so I even took her order, and she was there with a friend, and I think they were meeting up there. And so I took their order, and I was waiting for the right moment so that she wasn't talking to the friend, so that I could just kind of pull her to the side and apologize. And I didn't feel like the moment came. And then she left, right? She left. And I felt like an absolute coward. Because here I was, I had the opportunity to apologize to this person, someone that I disrespected and that I was cruel to. And I failed in that moment to make it right. And I was just like beside myself. And I was like, I can't do this again. I cannot go on for more years holding on to this one moment where I should have done something different than I was. And I should have been who I thought I was in my life. So I decided that somehow I was going to find her, and I was going to find her, and I was going to apologize. It was the last thing I did. So then a few moments later, I'm back at work doing what I'm doing. And my partner, one of my employees, we call them partners at Starbucks. My employee comes to the back with a book, and she's like, hey, somebody left this book out in the lobby. And I don't know if it was intentional or not. And so I look at the book, and it's the book Eat, Pray, and Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. The one that the book I had just asked about, or was just thinking about, meditating about the night before. And I was like, well, that's an interesting, okay. I was like, that's an interesting coincidence, right? Because back then I was still getting accustomed to the idea of synchronicity and the connection with source and the symbols and the signs we get to affirm us. So I was like, well, that's interesting. I just was thinking about this the night before. So then I take the book, and what we had a habit of doing at Starbucks is we will hold on to things for a few weeks to see if someone comes back and claims it. If not, then it's just, whatever. And so I put it on the spot to where I was going to leave it, so that if someone came back for it, then they can come back for it. And I was like, you know what, let me take a look at it, because I want to see if it's even worth purchasing, because I had not even thought of keeping that book. I was just going to open it and read it and see if it was worth buying. And then I would just buy my own copy, because I was assuming the person that left it was going to come back for it. So then I opened the book, and there's a book tag or book thing in there. It's a book marker. And on the book marker, it was this program where people, they get a book and they read it, and then they leave it someplace for someone to find so that they can read it. And then they ask that person who finds it to pass it on to someone else as well, to do the same thing. And it says it on the tag. So it says, if you are the finder of this book, you have the opportunity now to read it, to learn from it, and then leave it for someone else to find once you're done with it, so we can pass it on. So it was this whole thing. There was a website that you could go to learn about the program, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. So I was like, I'm going to get a chance to read this book. And at the bottom, it says the last person to read this book was Lisa so-and-so, which was the reporter. So in that moment, it all just condensed and came all in one moment, just like, hey, you have an opportunity. Not only do you need to find this person to apologize and make amends, but you have an opportunity to learn and to evolve spiritually because of this. This is supposed to happen. And so I was like, oh my God, now I have to find this person. So I stopped what I was doing. I went on break and I started looking online and trying to find her. And I found an old email address that was connected to a university. And I thought, maybe she still checks that email. Because sometimes when you're part of the alumni, you will, still keep in contact, or you still keep those connections. So I decided, you know what, let me just send an email and hopefully I will get her. She was no longer a reporter at that point for that TV station. It looked like she was working for a different company and wasn't in the media anymore. So I emailed her and I said, hey, you may not know who I am. You may not remember me. I just served you at Starbucks, but I need to take this moment. If you read this, I need to take this moment to apologize to you. And then I went through the entire story of how I first met her and how I was cruel to her and how I felt like a coward because I didn't apologize to her when I had the opportunity to do it. And I wasn't going to miss this opportunity again, especially because the book that she left for someone was the exact book the night before I was asking God if maybe that's something I should read or buy. And so it was meant to be. And so I said, this is now my opportunity. So I hope that you see this, but I wanted to say I'm so sorry for the way that I treated you. You did not deserve to be treated this way. And whether you remember me or not, just know that who you are today is who you're supposed to be. You are on your path. You are where you're supposed to be. And the level of synchronicity that has occurred because of all of this means that we're both in alignment and that we are both who we are supposed to be at this point. And so know that you are loved by God and know that you are in alignment and that you are becoming more of what you intend. And so I apologized, and then I went into Ferny spiritual teacher mode, and then I gave her all of this kind of channeled information and channeled acknowledgement from the universe, from source, from God. Within 10 minutes, she responded via email. And she was like, I was in the middle of walking across the street when I opened the email and I saw what you wrote. And I stopped dead in my tracks and almost got hit by a vehicle because I'm completely blown away by what you just said. She said, I was asking God for a sign that I was where I'm supposed to be in my life and that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I asked God for a sign, and that sign be very direct and to the point. And then here you are emailing me the day that I asked for the sign. And not only that, but then she just goes into the story about how she was not very happy as a reporter and that it was a lot of inter-office politics. There was a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that just made her life a living hell for her. And so when I saw her, she says, even though I may have been cruel and even though I may have been an immature, kid, she says it was true that she was pretending to be someone that she wasn't. And what I called out and what I did was essentially acknowledge her being a fraud of herself, a fraud version of herself, and not being an authentic version of herself. But she says, it doesn't matter. I forgive you if you need that. She says, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I can't believe that this has happened today. And so she got her sign. I got my opportunity to make amends. And in that moment, I realized that, it's never too late. It's never too late to be accountable to yourself, to be accountable to who you've been in the past, even if it wasn't a good person or if it was a person who was within integrity or a person who did not align with who you're trying to be or who you're choosing to be. So you will always have an opportunity to resolve things. But if you want to be someone with an integrity, if you want to be in alignment with the teachings and the ideology and the beliefs that you hold so genuinely in your heart, that means so much to you, then you start by owning who you were. So you can't move forward. You can't become something else. You cannot evolve into something more until you see who you've been and you own that. And that is a necessary step in the progression of being more, of being a master, and of getting the most out of your life. You cannot ascend, you cannot evolve until you own who you've been. You have to start there. It has to start there. You cannot go on with your life and pretend to be someone else and ignore what has been done. You know, even us today with our lives, with the idea of reincarnation, whether you believe in that or not, you know, the soul allows itself to have these personas and experiences throughout various lifetimes and to know itself. And sometimes what we do in one lifetime that is an error or that's a wrong, we can come back and we can resolve that in a completely different way. We can make peace with that. We can bring purpose and understanding and meaning to that, even if it's in a different lifetime. So you have a choice to make every day to decide who you want to be in this world. And if you make the same choice every day and allow yourself to remain within integrity of that, good for you. Because that takes a lot of effort and work and practice. It takes practice to become that consistently. But before you start to own that, before you start to really settle into that, go look at yourself and who you've been and own who you've been. And if it's one day ago or 20 years ago, doesn't matter, because you have the chance today to right a wrong. And in doing so, you release yourself from that trauma, from that pain, from that karma. And then you can move forward and continue to evolve into more and more and more. The more you learn, the more you evolve, the more you awaken. Okay? All right, so let me look at questions here at what you might want to ask me about with regards to this. Remember, guys, no readings today, so we're only doing Q&A regards to like the topic or spirituality. So I'm open to those kinds of questions. No personal readings. Let's go here, bottom here. Okay, so go here. Yeah, that's a very good medium Nicole. She says, please forgive me if I misspoke. If we don't look back and make ourselves cringe, then we haven't evolved. That is very true. I can look back at who I was today, back to who I was back then. And there are a lot of things that today I would not even consider or think of doing, because I know better, and life experience has taught me so much more. And not only that, but when you become a person who is okay causing harm to others or causing pain to another human being, and you get comfortable with that, and that's a norm, that's a standard. And some of us come from lives where that's a norm. You know, I come from the hood. I grew up in the hood. It's normal for people to get shot. I mean, the last time I was in Houston, just a couple months ago with my sister, we were packing up my mother's things to prepare her for her move. We heard gunshots as if it were just like any other day. And that's something that I grew up around, is hearing those things where I'm from. Where I live now, I mean, it's so quiet. You know, if there's a party happening at a house, that's a huge big ordeal in the neighborhood, because we're not used to, you know, disrupting the lives of other people. You grow into something more. Same thing with my sister. She's just in a very different situation, but you evolve and you become something else. And for people who grew up in a household where there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of physical aggression, or there's a lot of there was a broken relationship, broken marriage, or people did not know how to communicate with each other to support each other, that becomes a norm. It becomes a standard. And so that will carry on unless you choose to evolve past that or to grow past that. And sometimes you have to be the first person to make that change. Because of the way that I grew up, especially when we're dealing with a lot of family on a regular basis, family can be very triggering. It can be very triggering to who we used to be. And so even if we're trying to be someone different or someone else or someone that is based in an ideology that we really, really believe in, we can go right back into our old patterns of behavior and responses because of a trigger by a family member. And I went through this myself as well. I was trying to evolve to a different way of dealing with things in life. And every time I thought I was making progress because I was spending time on my own, focusing on what I wanted to do, operating differently, speaking differently, connecting differently with people, what would end up happening is as soon as I would go and spend time with my family, I would get triggered and I would immediately slip back into behaviors that I thought I outgrew or that I thought I'd overcome. So I really had to work on that. And it took me actually taking myself out of the equation because I could not, it was so hard. And this is where it's so difficult to evolve spiritually, because when you are dealing with the same types of conditions and situations every day, it is so hard to progress and evolve spiritually because the triggers are always there. That is the hardest place to make those changes. This is why people go off into the mountains. They go off to monasteries. They leave and they go off and they completely separate themselves because they're trying to find that path for themselves. They're trying to evolve spiritually. And I did the same thing. I had to leave and kind of pull away from my family relationships for a while so that I could find myself and really get rooted in who I was trying to be and who I was choosing to be. And it wasn't that, and I had to do that. And I did it for several years before I came back around and started to interact more with my family. And when I came back around, the triggers were still there, but I had way more practice being this chosen version of myself that I wasn't falling into the trap of reacting by the triggers. And so it takes practice. You have to consistently work on it. If you have anger management issues, it's not going to change overnight just because you decide you're not going to be a person who's always angry. You have to practice not being triggered, not allowing things to upset you, not allowing yourself to feel so attached to whatever it is that is triggering that anger within you. You have to practice it. And you can't blame other people for making you angry or for triggering you, because people will be who they are. And you can't blame others for who you are going to be in all of that. You have to own who you are. Even if someone pissed you off, someone worked you up, someone did this or that, doesn't matter. You own who you are and you are still accountable to yourself no matter what. So you have to practice it. And even if it takes a little time away, if you have to make it a point to kind of give yourself space away from the triggers and the things that are constantly causing you to react the same way, then give yourself that space, put a little buffer there and work on yourself. And practice who you choose to be, because you have to get rooted and settled into that. And then when you go back into a situation where you're dealing with these old triggers, it's not going to be the same. It'll be much easier to respond in the way that you have chosen and to stay consistent and in integrity with your beliefs and with your ideas. Sarah has a good question. So I find this difficult. I have cut toxic people from my life, my father and sister. I feel the urge to open dialogue with them to ask for forgiveness, but how to do that without opening old wounds? Anytime we're going to engage with people who have caused us a lot of pain or who have been a part of the equation when it comes to being toxic, first of all, just because you are family does not obligate you to maintain those connections. Blood means nothing. Blood means nothing. Family is the family of your making, of your choosing, of a place. It comes from a place of love and of connection and of being within integrity and understanding each other. It comes from a whole host of things. Now, you can be born into a family, but you get to choose who you're going to be in this world. And if who you choose to be in this world and how you choose to respond to life is not aligning with the family that you've come from, because it's so different. If who you choose to be is someone who isn't violent or aggressive, who doesn't take it out physically on people, but that's something that is a very norm and standard in your family, then you don't have to subject yourself to maintaining those bonds and those connections. You don't have to, especially if nothing is changing with that. It's one thing to bring it to the attention of people that you love. It's one thing to say, hey, this might be okay for y'all. Y'all may be used to this, but I don't think this is okay. I think this is not a good thing. This is not healthy. And I think that this is actually hurting us as a family. And I think we should work on changing this. And if all you get is laughter, and if all you get are people who are just going to continue to resist or continue to not choose to hear you and not even see themselves or examine their own behavior amongst themselves, then you're not obligated to maintain that relationship. There's no obligation there. You get to choose if you want to stick with that or not. Granted, if we were responsible for pain that we've caused our loved ones, then by all means, if you need to rectify and resolve that, and when I mean by rectify and resolve that, I don't mean get in a good place with these people. You may never get in a good place with these people. You may never come to a place of peace and perfect union. It's not going to be a kumbaya moment, but just to acknowledge yourself in that and own what you have to own is enough. It's enough. You don't need that person or those people to do anything other than just to be aware of what you intend in that action, in that behavior. So if you need to apologize for some things, if you need to right some wrongs, I have a niece who I don't believe in spanking children. I grew up in a household where I was beat the hell out of on a regular basis. So I don't believe in spanking children or hitting children. And I think that is something that people kind of develop, especially in communities like the one that I grew up in, which was a lower Hispanic community, culture, etc. I mean, it was a poor background, and it was the hood, it was the ghetto, and that's just the norm. You know, your kids acting up, you spank the hell out of them until they get right. And I get it. I understand the challenges with raising children. I get that it's not an easy thing for people, but I honestly believe that, you know, when we teach each other that hitting each other, causing each other physical pain is an acceptable form of control or of correcting a situation, then it becomes a standard, and then it becomes something that we all do as adults as well in one way, shape, or form. And we treat people and we behave towards them in this way as well, whether we realize or not. So I don't believe in hitting children. But when I grew up and when I was younger and I had, you know, nieces or nephews or cousins to babysit, I would do what I was taught, which was, if you're not behaving, I'm going to spank you. I'm going to spank you. And so I regretted who I was when I was with my cousins. And I mean, just like a couple of years ago, I reached out to one of my cousins and I said, hey, you know, because I mean, we have a good relationship, but I said, hey, I know that you may not think anything of this, but I just want you to know that that was inappropriate. That was wrong of me to do. And I'm so sorry that I ever spanked you because you were misbehaving. And I'm so sorry that I ever did that to you, because that is not who I want to be, nor is that someone that I would want to be if I had my own children, nor would I want my own children to be spanked or to be touched by another human this way. So I'm so sorry that I was just so ignorant and stupid and did not have the ability to help you, to help you grow and to help you to understand as a child, and instead just resorted to something I was conditioned to do. And she was like, oh, it's okay. It's no big deal. Like, she's like, no, it's fine. She's like, I love you. You're fine. Don't worry. You don't have to apologize. I'm like, no, I do. I do have to apologize because I need to own up to that. And so there are times when we do need to own up to who we were, and we need to go back and we need to write it. Even if it's just saying, hey, who I was back then I was wrong. And I know that today, and I'm sorry. And that's okay. That's enough to begin the process, because you may not know the kind of healing that you're giving that person. You may not know what you're allowing and what's happening within that individual. I had someone do that to me. I had a cousin who babysat me, who she was always worried that whenever I would be left with my stepfather, that I was going to be hit and abused or sexually molested. Because that is what happened whenever I was left with my stepfather or dealing with his father. And so once my mother could not afford to pay her for her babysitting, and she said, well, if you can't pay me, I'm not going to do it. I'm not babysitting for free. But she felt awful because she didn't want to be taken advantage of. But she also knew that if I was in the care of those people, then I was going to be abused. And when that ended up happening and I was sexually molested as a kid, when I was abused as a child, and she heard about the stories after this happened, she told me that she carried such guilt in her heart for many years, and she broke down in front of me. And it's interesting because I didn't remember that part of my life at all, but she broke down and cried and said, "I'm so sorry, please forgive me that I didn't protect you, and I could have protected you, but I just was so focused on like not being taken advantage of and all that." I'm like, you know what, it's okay. I appreciate that, and don't worry, I don't blame you for what happened to me. And if anything, I use that experience to teach others and teach them about themselves and help them to empower themselves. So if anything, I see it as an opportunity to use for something good. And so if you feel awful, if you feel like you're not at peace with it, do not worry, because I understand the position you were in, and it's okay. It's okay. And if you need forgiveness, I forgive you, but it's not necessary. I love you, and I appreciate you apologizing to me. And for her, it was like a release. It allowed her to release all of this pain and guilt that she had carried for all these years. So even if the person that you have to apologize is not someone that is a healthy person and they're very toxic, it's okay, even if it's just a one-sided experience. But you have to own it. And if it isn't easy to do it in person, or they make it difficult to do it in person, it's okay to write a letter. It's okay to send a text message. It's okay to make an audio recording. It's okay to do it that way if that's what you need to do. But you gotta own it. You gotta claim what you've been, so that you can release yourself from that, and then you can move forward. Because it's just a backpack of garbage that you're carrying around with you that is keeping you from ascending and to evolve into the next level of yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Violet Sky has a question. She says, my main question, how do you know what path is right? I was raised Catholic and have religious friends, but I have experienced a lot of things spiritually, medium, etc. That some would consider evil. All things that exist under the realm of source. Nothing exists without the permission of God to exist. In order for something to exist, it needs permission to exist, and it does because it has it. And so everything is of source of God. And it all serves a purpose in one way, shape, or form. Even the things that you would call evil, or people would be fearful of to call evil. Just 1,000 years ago, people like myself were burned at the stake or drowned or tortured because we exhibited abilities. Today, people still see us in this form, and if they had the chance, they would kill me. I would be taken out. And in some places in the world, that still happens. Even just being a gay man, that's a reason for someone to take my life, to punish me or to make me suffer. And in the moment that you are willing to compromise compassion, in the moment you're willing to compromise consideration or peace or just understanding that we all have a right to exist, even those of us that we don't care for, we all have a right to exist. But in the moment that you're willing to compromise the compassion and the understanding of that right to achieve a goal using violence or death of others, is the moment that you've compromised your integrity within your beliefs and your ideas and within the faith that you may hold so sacred. And so people who going around who are holding up, the 10 Commandments in one hand, and then are running around with the rope ready to lynch someone, you're not in integrity. You're in conflict with yourself, and you don't truly understand what you follow, what you believe. At this point, you're just someone who has fallen into the pattern of, okay, I'm going to go to church on Sunday. I'm going to call myself a Christian. I'm going to wear a few crosses, put some things around. I'm going to act like I'm a Christian. But if it's not advantageous to me, if I have something to lose out of this, if I have to consider somebody else that's different from that belief, then it's okay to completely throw that out the window and just punish that person, destroy them, get rid of them. And at that point, you've lost yourself to the darkest version of yourself. And I think that's the problem in this world, is that we are willing to do that on a regular basis. so that we can win out, so that we can exist, and so that the things that are conflictive to us, the things that challenge us, the things that get in the way of us achieving an ideal paradise type of experience, at that point we make it okay to destroy and to become that darkest version of ourselves, and we disgrace ourselves, and that is not okay, and it is not within alignment. And we all can fall. We all can fall many times, but how often are we getting up? How often are we trying to stay within integrity? How often are we trying to remain within a mindset and a place and a standard of being that actually fulfills the beliefs, the ideas that we hold so true, that we hold it's in such value? So I think at the end of the day, what I would say to you about this is it doesn't matter what other people are or think or believe. That's their path, that's their journey. Some people are meant to walk that path. Some people are meant to walk that journey. You don't need to be concerned about those people. We will never live in a planet where everybody's on the same page, because it wasn't designed this way. It wasn't designed this way. So this world was designed with conflict and contrast, and to provide us the opportunity to experience ourselves in various ways. So we will never live in a world where everybody's on the same page. But we still live in a world that exists, that does have peace, have love, have generosity, have kindness, people who want to cooperate and work together, even if they're different. We still live in a world where that exists. It may not be everywhere, but it exists. And it has to start with us choosing to walk in that direction, to go in that direction, to work towards the betterment of humanity. Sometimes when we're challenged and we see people wanting to hurt others because they feel justified, because they feel like they have that entitlement, because they feel like they've been given that divine right by God. Sometimes we have to support those who are being treated in such a disgusting way. We have to support those who have no one else to support them, who have no one else to stand for them. Sometimes we have to stand, we have to act, we have to take a position of protection, of self-preservation, of self-love. And it is a very tricky place and position to hold. But to go and act without the need for that, to just say, you know what, I feel like my beliefs and my ideas are right. There's no wrong in that. And I'm going to wipe out everything that is in the way of that is in conflict with that. You've lost yourself. You're out of integrity, and you've disgraced yourself in the creation of life, and you've gone against the creation at that point. And so it's important to come back and to reassess who you've been and who you're becoming at that point, because if you continue down that path, you will lose yourself, and then it's going to take a whole lot more work, and maybe even several lifetimes, to kind of come back to a place that you may have begun with just asking the question, just wondering, like, who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be doing here? What purpose does my life serve? And that's a great place to be at. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's an incredible place to be at. Just asking that question, just wondering, because you are opening yourself up to the experiences that life, that source may grant you, and answering that for you. All right, my dears. I think that is it for today. And yes, I think that's it for today. So thank you so much for tuning in with the sermon. I will make this available online. I've got, on my site, I actually will have a dedicated page for this, and I'm building that up as well. I won't be on next Sunday because I am going to be in Houston, and I'm probably not going to be, it's the day after the wedding, so I'm probably not going to be any good for a sermon. So I'm probably not going to be on for a sermon next Sunday. I just want to give you all a heads up. I will be on here Wednesday, though, because Wednesday is my last night before I go on vacation. And I'll be on here Wednesday for readings for those of you who want to tune in for the reading part. Okay? All right, my dears. I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope y'all have a good rest of your week, okay? Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.